What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Meko, joined by my guy Morgan here. And Morgan, we are now officially on to the next round in the playoffs. But before we start talking Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we still got to revel in the fact that the Lions did get their first playoff win against the Los Angeles Rams, and take some time to break down some of the top plays that came out of that game. Because again, there were some really impressive and impactful moments throughout that game. And I think we would be doing the team a little bit of an injustice if we didn't take out time and just kind of replay some of that and really dive into what helped the Lions be successful against the Rams.
Yeah, and it felt like a blur, really. I know we talked about it in our, recap video that we did on Monday, the day after the win against the Rams. And yeah, we're excited. I've just been kind of soaking it in, trying my best to just be in the moment. Like you said, Meko, not shift to the Bucs just yet. Soak this in for another 24 hours or so, and then. But yeah, it was exciting to watch this game back again. Both I watched the broadcast view the day after, and then I watched the All-22 today. So got some really good looks at things, and yeah, it was fun to break down because I remember being there in person and seeing it live. You have those moments that stick out in your head, and you're like, man, that was huge. And we're not even going to cover everything here just because there were so many big moments, but we hope we can show you at least a few that are, we'll be like, okay, that's exactly how I remember it happening in my head.
Yeah, and I think one of the best places to start is with, two former Rams who got to play against their former team and was really having success early on in this game, and Jared Goff and Josh Reynolds. And the first play that we're going to look at is just that. And I remember at one point in time, Morgan, during the season when the Lions offense was kind of struggling a bit, and I remember coming to you and asking yo, remember those 20-yard plus plays that we were throwing to Josh Reynolds? Where did those go? Well, first game against the Rams, those types of plays were back in full effect.
Yeah, and he had their number, man. I think he's not overly fast, he's not overly strong or twitchy, but he's a pro. He's going to run good routes. He's going to be where he needs to be in terms of getting to his landmarks. And, Goff's going to trust him. And this is Goff throwing the ball with, again, anticipation. There's a lot of traffic in and around the ball when it's slicing its way through the defense to get to Reynolds. So, yeah, this view is really impressive. And, yeah, just really good job of Goff throwing with anticipation and trusting that Reynolds is going to be where he needs to be because, again, look at all the hands and bodies that go by this ball as it gets there, right? There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and this was one of those plays I remember watching it during the broadcast, and I kind of gasped a little bit because from the angle that they had the camera, this looked like an overthrow. The whole way it looked like he overshot Josh Reynolds, and it's a good play by Goff because again, he puts it in a position where it can't get tipped or deflected into another defender's hands, and then Josh Reynolds does an amazing job of showing strong hands at the point of attack to be able to reach up, pull that down, and still pick up a couple yards before he's hit.
Yeah, and he did this all day, man. He was making some grown man catches, some good run after the catch that we'll see in a little bit here, on one of his other big plays. So, yeah, and Goff was money, man, save for a few moments where I was like, oh my God, what's going on? The backwards pass in particular. But other than that, he was really clean. The ball placement was there most of the night, from these intermediate passes to J. Ray and to St. Brown to the swing passes that, he hit with Ja and Monty, including that Monty got that. We're not even going to highlight it here, but that first down before the game sealing first down where Monty made 97 missing space. That was really nice, man. Just a ball player making a play with the ball in his hands, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I got to give a lot of credit to Ben Johnson as well in kind of scheming up some of these plays. When you and I were breaking down the Rams defense, this was some of the stuff we saw in terms of them playing a lot of off coverage. So again, Ben Johnson doing a really good job of allowing his wide receivers to kind of challenge deep, but at the same time break off a lot of these routes to take advantage of that open space and those open zones underneath that coverage. So like you said, this was something that we saw a lot of in the first half of that game. And it allowed, I think, Jared Goff to get into a good rhythm. And with receivers running basically uninterrupted, not being challenged at the line, it really starts to be a pitch and catch type of situation, right, Morgan?
Yeah, and they were playing a lot of cover two shell where they'd have two deep safeties, and I think some of that was just they're not going to get the top blown off by JMO or anyone else running by them.
Mm-hmm.
But then they paid for it in some of these intermediate, throws. They got the Lions to third down on that one occasion, and they threw that corner route that they love to run to Saint where he converted, and that it just looked incredibly easy. And it's because JMO like cleared it out, and it's pick your poison. Nothing that the Lions do is overly complicated on some of these concepts that they go to. Some of their, the things they go to on money downs or got to have it downs. They're executing better than you are consistently, and it's because of these obsessive personalities like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'm sure it rubs off on the rest of that room. I know, it's tough to be around somebody like him and not work like him, right?
Absolutely. And another person that's really working hard is on the defense side of the football, and that's in Brian Branch, right? Like you and I, we said this in our recap. We highlighted him when we were talking about X factors, get into the game. And again, it's not maybe the stuff that jumps out at you in the stat sheet. There weren't interceptions, there weren't forced fumbles, but he made life difficult for Matthew Stafford and the likes of Cooper Kupp and even some of these tight ends when it came down to them operating within the red zone. And you picked out a really good play here where, again, it's something that it doesn't turn into a sack. It doesn't turn into, any type of turnover, but it's a really impactful play to help keep the Rams out of the end zone.
Yeah, Miko, this was a nice stand here on the first defensive series for the Lions, and they bowed up in the red zone much like they did all day, and forced a field goal, and that was the key to the game. I know we talked about that in the recap video that we did on Monday, but yeah, this is just a really nice rep by Brian Branch. He doesn't tip his hat until late, and yeah, they just did a really good job of mixing and matching some of these blitzes and some of these looks that they were throwing at Stafford in the red zone. And Branch is such a good blitzer. There's no wasted movement. He's getting downhill. He'll run through a running back's chest if he steps up to try to block him. It's really fun to watch him blitz. And yeah, this is just, I love it. I love that he rolled into this too. You'll see it from that top angle again, where because of the Rams' motion, they check into this, it looks like. And yeah, it results in a free runner because Kyron Williams can only block him or Anzalone, and he picks Anzalone, right?
Yeah. And like you said, like this is something that's really good by Brian by, again, like you said, not tipping your hand, being in the right position. But I think I love the follow through on him being able to get his hands up. Sometimes you see in situations like this where, a player's trying to, again, disrupt the pass, get into the quarterback's vision, and then they end up, hitting them in the face mask. And now we have to deal with, roughing the passer and things like that. Part of this is, Matthew Stafford turning away, but at the same time, like, BB does a really good job of, again, being under control. And you and I have talked about that in the past when we've talked about Iffy, when we've talked about Brian Branch, when it comes down to blitzing from the secondary. Like, again, not every player in the secondary is adept at rushing the passer from that position, right? Some guys get wide-eyed. They lose all sense of, technique. And that's how sometimes you get penalties. But he does a really good job here, like you're saying.
Yeah, Brian Branch is it's a cliche thing to say, but just a football player, right? Like he can play corner, you can use him as a linebacker, just because he's a ball player. And it's crazy to say this about a rookie who's not even done playing his first year in the NFL, but he's a pro. He's like, we've talked about it again and again. He's got all that experience at Bama. He's a pro. And you saw it a bunch against the Rams. He was big time on a lot of coverage reps. He got called for a couple penalties, if I'm not mistaken, at least one I know of off the top. But yeah, he was big time, and he was integral in keeping the Rams out of the end zone when they did get down into the low red.
Yeah, on that same drive that we just looked at, I think it was probably the play before, or maybe two plays before, they tried to run that switch release to Cooper Kupp, where another play that we highlighted that Matthew Stafford's really good at throwing these, back to the pylon type of floaters. And Brian Branch does a really good job sifting through that traffic and being able to disrupt that pass. And then, like you said, fast forward a little bit later, now they're blitzing him and he's once again impacting the play. So absolutely, like Brian Branch is something that we already know, is someone we already know is a steal from this draft. But I think in the coming years, Lions fans are really going to start to see him grow and mature. We talked about, again, a couple, last week about how some of these players got voted to All Pros. While Brian Branch didn't get voted All Pro, he was one of the few Lions players to get votes, though. And that's still a really big accomplishment, even for a rookie at slot corner.
Yeah, you took it out of my mouth, Miko. I was just about to say there's a world where Brian Branch goes on a nice little run here of being a first team All Pro at the nickel just because he has all the requisite skills to be able to be a 3-down player in today's NFL. Like, not to get ahead of ourselves, but against the Bucs, they just don't run the ball well. They haven't all year. And there's a world where they just use Branch even as a as a linebacker in quote unquote running downs, right? Because keeping him on the field just makes it a little bit easier to deal with the likes of Mike Evans and Godwin and the rest of them. So yeah, he's a Swiss Army knife. The Lions have several players in the back end like that now in Brian Branch, CJ Gardner-Johnson, and Ifatu Melifonwu. So it's exciting because you're seeing the Lions defense kind of morph as they get really late into the season here and obviously into the playoffs. So it could look some totally different than the way they played the Buccaneers back in week 6. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that I would love to see continue, and we already highlighted him once, but like we were talking about, is the play of Josh Reynolds. I think this passing attack is so much better when Josh Reynolds is involved because it kind of goes back to what you were saying. It allows you to have so many weapons and it allows you to attack so many different layers of the defense. We know about having the rushing attack with Monty and Ja. We know about how Saint can really honestly work from any portion of the field, whether it's short, mid-range, or even on some of these longer routes. Josh Reynolds does a really good job of always seeming to work in this intermediate range and then turning those into bigger plays by just having really good route running and understanding coverage.
Yeah, like he's a throwback, right? Like almost like a basketball player that thrives in the mid-range. So you know, Goff here, because of the motion to St. Brown, knows that this is zone. No one travels with him. You just get a minor shift in personnel to compensate. And what I really like here, this is just this looks like a cover 2 shell that the Rams are in again here with 2 deep safeties split in the back, the deep part of the field in half. And once we get to this wider shot again from the coach's film, you'll see, I want you to watch Jamison Williams at the top of the screen with the white shirt coming out of the bottom. He's going to command so much respect from those safeties. You see that it's just a giant portion of green grass that Reynolds is able to run into. And Goff did a good job all night of layering in these throws because they're not the easiest. It looks easy, but you're having to put enough zip on it that it gets over the linebackers and then also, gets back down in front of the safeties so that the receiver can make a play on the ball. So yeah, I love this, and it's something that you have to pick your poison again, right, Miko? Because if you don't run with JMO, then Goff has shown that he'll cut that thing loose now. He trusts Jameson. And then if you do run with him, then that's where St. Brown and Jay Ray and others kill you.
And one thing that I also want to give, Jared credit for is his way of working through his progressions, because you see him start on that side of the field where most of his weapons are, and he comes back to Jay Ray right in the middle of the field, and he's able to fit it right between those 2 linebackers. Goes back to, again, him understanding timing, him understanding how long to allow a play to develop. He doesn't get stuck on he doesn't get stuck on JMO. He doesn't get stuck on St. Brown. He immediately moves to the next guy and sees that, listen, Jay Ray's going, unchallenged across the middle. Let me fit this ball in between these 2 linebackers. Big play waiting to happen.
Yeah, great point too. And you can see he's snapping through his progressions, and sometimes people get in trouble, quarterbacks will, when they don't get to that backside in breaking route quick enough. I know they take too long, and then you're heated up and you got to force a throw. So yeah, it was good. He snapped through most of them, I feel like, all night, and rarely held the ball too long, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, not to jump ahead of ourselves, but if I'm, Todd Bowles and I'm watching this with the Tampa Bay Bucks, this is the type of stuff that you're looking at your defense like, hey, I don't want to see any of this, right? I don't want to see guys running unchallenged across the middle of the field. We have to communicate better. And if you're not, because if you're not, Jared Goff and these weapons are really just going to kind of pick you apart.
Yeah, and we've seen that if you're going to allow the Lions to just quote unquote, dink and dunk it down the field, they have enough players who can make run after catch. Like, right, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is hell to tackle once he catches the ball in the middle of the field or out by the boundary. He broke a few tackles the other night. Josh Reynolds isn't easy to bring down. Excuse me. JMO is tough to bring down, especially once he gets out in space. Sam Laporta is a load. Jameer and Monty, like, it's just going to be tough. So that's kind of what we've been on this whole time, right, Miko? Like when we make this content for going up against whatever team, like Rams fans weren't really hearing us. Like, this offense is efficient, man. Like it sputtered in the second half, but you kind of saw it, showing a little bit of all of its teeth in the first half when it was just 3 for 3, touchdown, 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 and the Rams just looked like they were on skates, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, that's the benefit of this offense, is that it can get out to these quick, explosive type of leads like it does in the first half. And yeah, it may hit a lull in one quarter or another, but we've also seen throughout the season, like, the third quarter has been a nightmare for the Lions. But oftentimes they typically get things going again in the fourth quarter, and that's what makes this Lions offense so difficult to game plan before, because even when you think you have them figured out, all it takes is a couple adjustments here and there, because like you said earlier, there's just too many weapons, there's too many concepts, there's too many ways that they can manipulate your defense to get the type of matchups that they want, whether that's in the passing game or like we're about to see here in the run game.
Yeah, I love this one too. We're checking into the right after that catch by Jay Ray against the cover 2 shell that we just looked at. We have first and goal at the 10. And this is just really great design and great execution. Watch Jonah Jackson first on this view. He does a great job of getting a chip and basically widening the hole for Ja, and then he climbs and gets another block and makes it super easy. So you get a good view here, and then watch Panay too coming across on the wham. So he's going to go across the formation and basically ear hole 0. I'm sure this doesn't feel really good, but yeah.
Yeah, if I'm Byron Young, I'm probably like sitting here like, bro, I thought I got a week off from having to deal with athletic tackles when we didn't have to play Trent Williams. But like you said, like, this is just really well designed and really well blocked. And that's something that the Lions haven't always done, specifically talking about Jonah Jackson, who's kind of had an up and down season with both performance and health. But this felt like stealing, Morgan. When this play happened in the game, it was like, oh, I thought the Lions had really unlocked something when it came down to this rushing attack. It didn't quite turn into that, but again, 7 points is still 7 points.
Yeah, and it was like this for both of their both of their rushing touchdowns. The first one, credit to Jonah Jackson again. He moved Aaron Donald, man. He had a 1-on-1, and he moved Aaron Donald, uprooted him, and moved him back for the Monty touchdown. So, yeah, good to see Jonah have another strong game, especially right now. Like, if Jonah can get clicking, and you truly have a 5-headed monster at offensive line, this offense is going to be tough to stop, man. Because like you said, they get on these runs where they score 3, 4, 5 times in a row. And yeah, they might hit a lull, but if they scored 4 times earlier and they've got 31 points by the middle of the third quarter, you might be screwed anyway. So it's just tough, right?
Exactly. I was gonna say, like, Ben Johnson is a mastermind at just figuring out something else that works, because he'll sit there and be like, okay, fine, it looks like you guys kind of figured this aspect out. And that's kind of, again, not to jump ahead of ourselves, but looking back at that Bucks game, that's kind of what happened, right? Like, the Lions lost some pieces offensively. The things that they wanted to do didn't work. Ben Johnson adjusted on the fly, and the things that would work against that defense is what led the Lions to that win. Same thing kind of happened in this game against the Rams.
Yeah, 100%. And you adjust and you make plays when you have to have them. So to get Jared Goff's credit and the rest of the offense, we're going to get into it later, but they made the plays when they needed to have them. So I give them their credit even in the second half when they only mustered 3 points on the scoreboard.
Yeah, and another thing that, again, really want to highlight in this play is just like the strong running of Ja. Like, I know we've talked about it in the past, but it's always impressive to me because it just kind of really, it's something that makes me laugh when we start thinking about how he was talked about in the draft process. A lot of us thought he was just this scat back, this, just someone that you would use in the passing game, maybe not use a lot running up the middle. And he's really turned that on its head throughout this season of, again, running through arm tackles, running through 2-3 guys to be able to get into the end zone or just pick up additional yardage.
100% Miko. And that's what's cool about Ja's game as it's evolved through the season is we've seen all these tools in his toolbox and it seems infinite. And he's a 3-down back now. You can trust him. Is he the pass protector that Monty is? No, but he's good enough. They trust him out there on money downs. So it really makes the offense even more, variable just in terms of their personnel. So, I've loved Jameer's development. It's been awesome, especially lately, how much they're unloading him. And I think it's going to be that, the Lions potentially could have 3 games left. All right. And I expect that they're going to start showing some of these, ace of spades that they've had in their back pocket in terms of getting JMO, Ja, or whoever the ball, right? Getting them. They need some explosive. I would love to see some explosives this week against the Bucs. That'd be nice for scores.
Yeah, absolutely. But even if that doesn't happen, Morgan, right? Let's say the Bucs defense is for real. The Lions defense showed against the Rams, though, that they could be just as stout. And that's something that was really impressive to see. We know about them kind of shutting out the Rams in the red zone, but just kind of showing that aggressiveness that even when the Lions offense was kind of sputtering in that third quarter, this defense was more than happy to carry the load for them and really keep them in the lead for most of that game.
Yeah, and they came up big in the second half time and time again. I know they had the 2 explosive plays, where Vildor gambles and it burns him, and then Cam bites on the double move against Puka Nacua. But yeah, their playmakers made plays, man. Hutch had a really strong game. He had the 2 sacks. He had a bunch of hurries. I'd have to go check the ESPN versus PFF stats there, but he gets a really quick and easy win against Havenstein, who's playing really well, their right tackle. And it just forces his throw short of the sticks, and it ends up holding LA to yet another field goal. Man, they really needed to score here. It probably would have won them the game. And time after time, they came up with just 3 in the red zone instead of 7.
And again, we talked about this in the recap, but it's little plays like this that really force you to rethink the quality or how you grade a defense, right? Because I think we like to see shutouts. We want to see teams consistently having to punt. And that is, don't get me wrong, like that is a defense working at like the highest level. But plays like this matter too, even though it doesn't turn into a sack, even though Cooper Kupp still catches this pass. But everything else works in such a way where, like you said, Hutch is able to get quick pressure. So Stafford has to go to a quicker route. And you still have Brian Branch, who's in phase and is able to limit any type of run after catch. So, like, is it the best defensive play? No, but it's an important one, like you said, because of the reason that it allows them to, or forces the Rams to settle for a field goal, and they don't have the coaching staff, I guess, that's willing to go for it on 4th down and try and win a game, in a situation where I think Dan Campbell probably would have went for it on 4th down in this situation.
Yeah, I think McVay got really conservative in the second half, and it's his prerogative. He does have a Super Bowl ring, so I guess whatever. But yeah, I thought this was just Hutch had a bunch of reps like this where it didn't necessarily register on the stat sheet, but he had some quick wins. Yeah, he was in his bag, and you like to see him start. Again, we've talked about it a bunch of times. He's rushing with more of a plan now instead of just kind of like a maniac. It looks like he has more of a, all right, if they do this, I'm going to do this. If they do that, I'm going to do that. So, and he caught the dude leaning, trying to get back and, get off, make sure he can't get that outside shoulder beat. And Hutch hit that oopty-dooped on him and dropped him, man. That was nice.
Yeah, man. I love the way he's playing now. Now that he's kind of gotten into that rhythm, it seems like you're saying he's understanding how to be able to set up the offensive lineman and being able to win more consistently. Again, that doesn't mean winning every rep, but he's not going these long stretches where he's getting stalemated. And I think when that typically happens with him, he gets frustrated. And then now he has 2 issues that he has to deal with: the player that's blocking him and the frustration that's probably blocking him from being more successful or thinking through his rushing plan.
Yep, definitely. And this next snap I really like because they needed it, right? Like you need a big play here, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need something to happen. And this is huge because it forces a hold. And again, it's not something that's going to register on the stat sheet. Man, when you're watching the tape, you're like, this is a game saving type of play. And you can tell that maybe he had this one in his bag. Like, all right, if I'm going to save this for later. But he almost hits him with like a little bit of a hesitation, like he's going to hit the spin, like a little hezzy step, and then just dips that shoulder. He's 6'7", so I give him credit for getting as bendy as he did here because he's a big, tall dude. And yeah, he's able to just dip right underneath Havenstein's grip and ends up tackling him. And as soon as they threw the flag, I was like, oh my God. Because I was sweating at this point, Meko, because it looked like they were going to be in field goal range, and I didn't want them to be able to kill the clock and then kick a field goal. So having this happen and then having Dan have the guts to be like, yep, we'll do this again, because he could have just declined it and be like, okay, you can try to kick it from here. Maybe you'll miss it. Who knows? But yeah, this was huge. I shout out to Hutch because the Lions needed this, and they got it from one of their best players.
Yeah, one of my good friends said when the Lions drafted Hutch, right, there was a lot of debate at the time at the top of that draft of who was going to be the best pass rusher. And one of the things that one of my buddies said was that, listen, Hutch may not, it's potential that he may not develop into the best defensive end in the league, but he'll be the player that makes the play when the Lions need it. And I think that's been very true so far in his career to this point, whether it's getting a sack, whether it's forcing a turnover, or whether it's drawing a penalty. When the Lions need a play, you can always seem to count on 97 to do just enough to put his team in position to win the game.
Yep, and I'd be really nice this week against the Bucks if they do get James Houston back and you have him up, because then you have two guys that you can put on the outside on passing downs that can potentially win quickly and make Baker Mayfield's life hell. Because Mayfield's not good. Stafford, we talked about in the recap, was making some ungodly throws, man, like dropping the arm angle, crazy stuff. So,
bro, watching that no look back on the All-22 is nasty. It is a nasty look from the quarterback's perspective or behind the quarterback, because you see just how much he was not looking in that direction at all. But to your point, like that's not something that you really have to worry with a Baker Mayfield. And if you have a Hutch, if you have a James Houston, a Josh Pascal that's, again, starting to play really well, Aleem's really been in his bag, even before he got hurt, but seems to have picked up right where he left off.
Well.
There's a lot that this Bucks offense is going to have to deal with. And again, not to get too far into it, but spoiler alert, that offensive line has been having some issues. And while the Lions defensive line maybe isn't the best of the best at getting to the quarterback, against an offensive line like this, I think they're going to find a lot of success.
Yeah, they're going to make you pay, especially if you don't communicate well enough, because they do a good job of running games, running stunts, and forcing an offensive line to communicate, beyond just a guy winning a one-on-one like Hutch did there late. So, yeah, it's going to be – I'm excited to get into that film because I know you're going to watch the defense. I'm going to watch some games for the offense. So, yeah, I want to see what's going on with their protection. Mayfield's playing pretty well. I do know, I heard a stat from the main podcast Ryan Matthews dropped, and it's almost like a 1-to-1 trade-off in terms of his big play, throws to his turnover-worthy throws. So that's going to be interesting. Like the Lions' back end will have to make them pay if Mayfield does get a little loose with the ball. So, it's going to be exciting to watch. And yeah.
I mean, at the very least, just tackle better than Philly did. If nothing else, just do that and you'll probably be in a better position to win a game. But speaking of winning the game, we got to end this off with easily probably the biggest play of the game. No disrespect, Michael Badgley, but this is ball game, right? This is, shot clock running down and you're putting up the last, the last basket to basically, lock up the game. Jared Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, I wrote about this. on Pride of Detroit on our website about our thought process at the game, and like we were like, okay, I asked my friend who can do the calculations really quick. Like I was like, how many first downs do we need? He's like, 7 plays to 2 first downs, and I was like, all right, cool. So as we mentioned earlier, we got the one from Monty where he made the dude look foolish in space, and then we get this one here with Saint. So if you didn't hear St. Brown's this, and he basically said, yeah, we've run this concept so many times over 2 years now. We probably do it in our sleep. And 37 is going to want an OPI here, but this isn't an OPI because St. Brown has rights to every bit of space that is on that field. You can't prevent him from moving. So all he did was run through 37's chest, didn't extend those arms at all. Created enough space, and that ball, to Goff's credit, was right on time. And this was kind of when the vast majority of the crowd realized, it's over. We won. And it was like kind of rejoice. And then some people were like, are you sure? And then right after this, they got up and Goff, they got into the victory formation. And then that's when the celebration really started. It was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I was probably amongst those people that wasn't sure, right? Because it just felt like, it felt like they still needed a first down, like the way the clock was running and things like that. And then again, once the broadcasters kind of caught up, like, oh yeah, the Rams don't have another timeout. There's no other way for them to stop the clock, and all the Lions have to do is knee it. I'm right there with like everyone else. This is when stuff really just started to settle in. But I want to give Amon-Ra his due on this, because this is like very Hines Ward-ish. This is very Anquan Bolden-ish, where again, I'm just going to be stronger than you. I'm going to box you out. For people who have played basketball, again, just throwing your body in there. That's how you get a solid box out. You don't have to extend your arms. You don't have to push. That's how you're going to draw a flag in the situation. And he doesn't do any of that. He's very comfortable. He's very confident in his hands and in his route running that he's going to create the space without having to do anything extra.
100%, Meko. And to your point earlier, the timeout, shout out the Fort Field crowd. I don't know if y'all can hear it in my voice still, but mine's a little messed up. I know for we had them burn those 2 timeouts. So shout out to all of you guys who have those, all you people who have a hoarse voice like myself right now. And to your point, St. Brown, just a casual, another huge game in his first playoff game, 7 catches for 110 yards, 15.7 yards per pop. So no big deal. I love that he made All-Pro, man. Love it.
It's a true honor for him. It's something that he absolutely deserves for all the work that he's put in since, being drafted by this franchise. And Morgan, I just think this is the beginning. I don't know if the Bucs have anyone that can really match up with him, and completely erase him, to really hinder the Lions offense. But that's a topic for another video. We're not going to get into that because, we've already held you guys long enough. But these are some of the big plays that really stood out from this Lions-Rams game. Like we all know, the Lions are on to the next round. That playoff drought is no longer in existence. And now we can dream. We can dream about making it to an NFC championship. We can still dream about potentially making it to a Super Bowl. But first thing first is we got to take care of the Bucs. And that's what me and Morgan are going to be talking about in tomorrow's video as we break down both the offense and the defense and just kind of get an understanding of what that team is looking like. But if you have any more comments on this video, if there are any plays that we didn't get to talk about that you want to shine some light on, let us know in the comment section below. Also, be sure to head over to prideofdetroit.com and be able to check out all the latest articles that we have uploaded over there. And last but not least, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you have your notifications turned on, because as soon as we drop those film studies of the Bucs, you're going to want to watch them. You're going to want to be able to know what you're going to have to be on the lookout for as a Lions fan watching the Lions in the divisional rounds. So with all that said, I'm Meko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch. We'll catch you guys in the next one.